Oh, David, can you hear me okay?
We did it. We did it. Oh my God. Let me get rid of this upper screen.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, how's it going? You okay?
Oh, good. Yeah.
Great to finally see you and meet you.
Bad. Hold on. Let me see if I can get this thing any bigger down here. There we are. Hi, Danny.
Yeah, hi, David. How's it going? Good morning or afternoon, actually. Afternoon. Evening. Evening here.
Afternoon is fine. Is your niece asleep?
She is, yeah. She fell asleep about half an hour ago. So
So here
I
we are.
was watching SpongeBob SquarePants on Netflix.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, I remember those days. I'm glad SpongeBob is still around. Those were good times. I mean,
Uh,
having kids that age.
and she hasn't seen Willy Wonka yet. So
No. Why have you
well,
deprived?
I
Why
will
should
get her to
you
see it.
deprive? I'll tell you, in looking over your questions, I think I should be interviewing you about me instead of you interviewing about me, because I think you know more than I do. I hope I'm going to be able to keep up with all of this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I hope you don't mind partaking either. So, I mean, I'll fire away whenever you're ready.
No, no, no,
Um,
I'm good.
sure. So, I remember this is the first question. So, your collaboration with Richard Donner, uh, who was obviously he became a close friend as well, and
Hmm.
obviously an amazing, just an amazing filmmaker and a legend. Um, I mean, yeah. I mean, what were your first impressions of Richard and or Dick as a director, and how did his approach to the horror shape the Omen? What were there any creative differences between you two, or you know? Or,
Well, it was written before Dick ever came aboard. I had gotten a call from somebody I'd worked with in documentaries who was looking to jump into features, which has happened to me more than once. I started out doing documentaries with the Wolper Company, and a business guy in the company, not a creative person, called and said, "Have you seen The Exorcist?" And I said, "Yup." And he said, "I think the marketplace could take another one of those. What do you think?" And I said, "You mean about the devil, about possession?" He said, "Yeah, about all that stuff, about the devil, and do you think there's anything in it?" And I said, "Well, I don't know anything about the devil. I'm from an Orthodox Jewish family, and so the devil does not figure in except in a sort of cartoon character with a pitchfork and flames that, I've seen in comic books and on the screen. So I'm not quite sure I could do it." And he was actually a guy who had loaned me some money that I hadn't yet paid back. And he said, "Well, I don't just loan money either, so I think we've got a deal." So it started out that way, and because I knew nothing about the devil, and as a documentarian, I prided myself on doing research. That's what documentaries for me were all about, is to be the smartest guy ever that knew about a particular subject to be making a documentary about it. So I thought, well, I guess I got to start looking at the Bible, which is not easy for me. I come from a disabled personal background with reading. I was dyslexic.
same.
But I
Sa-
started, are you dyslexic as well?
I was supposed to be when I went to school. They said I was, but then I can like you, I can still read and write, and
Yeah.
so it's I kind of I was put down for it, but I can
Well,
still do
me
it.
too. Me
You know?
too. My father didn't call it dyslexia, he called it lazy. They didn't even know. We're talking about the late 40s, early
50s,
50s.
50s, yeah, yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah. So at any rate, I thought I would start reading the Bible. I had actually conquered my dyslexia. I went to Northwestern. I was a theater major. I had studied the classics. I had fallen in love, not that I was meant to be an actor, but I loved all that went on. I thought maybe I would be an actor for a minute. But it was way, way over my head. and they taught, they did Shakespearean plays and plays by Kafka and Oscar Wilde, etc. So I fell in love kind of with language, and when I read the Bible, there it was again. Language, just really brilliant language. Internal rhymes. I really liked the characters and I loved the way it was, but I couldn't, finally I focused on the book of Revelation, and which of course is the apocalypse, and it's all about, the end of the world and the devil with man facing off, when the Holy Roman Empire rises and a comet rips the sky, turning man against his brother, to you and I should die. That, the poem from, anyway, I had extrapolated that from the book of Revelations. Um, and I didn't do it very well just now, but it will come back to me. But at any
Right.
rate, so I hit on, the devil had a child. Oh, I didn't know that, the Antichrist. And so I thought, okay, what now? And then I realized I needed to find a family, a normal family, human family, for that child to come into. And I thought, well, what kind of family would that be? I had just done a documentary on the Kennedys, and I was very impressed with the father figure, Joseph Kennedy, who was an ambassador to the court of St. James. And God knows he had a cursed family. So I thought, okay, I'm going to ambassador to the court of St. James. And then I found the three sixes. The sign of the beast, which is the Antichrist, are three sixes. So I made it a birthmark, put it on his head. I made it a calendar date that he was born on 666. And today that still lives on walls, on biceps, on tattoos, on, the three sixes are something that just caught on. So,
Culturally, very,
culturally,
very culturally. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, everybody knows the three sixes, and certainly would not have. I'll take credit for a few things. Among them is putting the three sixes into the culture forever. But at any rate, um, I I wrote it for what I had loaned that guy money for, which was $7,500. And we started showing it around, and the first person to star in it was supposed to have been Charles Bronson, believe it or not. And that didn't last. The guy they chose as a director was a stuntman who was going to be directing for the first time and had a lot of car chases in it. And so that was pretty disappointing. But that fell apart because it was at Warner Brothers and they were holding it because they wanted it not to compete with
The
Exorcist.
sequel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with Exorcist too. So at any rate, it was back in in the control of Harvey Bernhard, who was a friend of Dick Donner's. He showed it to Dick. Dick's only feature had been Mr. Limpet, starring Don Knotts. He had a big career in television back.
Television. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember his television career. I mean, The
yeah,
Fugitive. Uh, I remember his early TV, television work, obviously, and
yeah.
so
Well,
yeah,
he was the energy it needed, and he even more than I wanted to hew to the road, to the line, the very thin line on the side of reality. I had had a scene in it originally in the graveyard where the hounds from hell were, where they found footprints that there were men in there in shrouds, and their footprints were like cloven hooves. And Dick said, "No." Okay, that's where nobody is believing this movie anymore. You can't do that. Everything has to look as though it could have happened. Every one of the deaths need not look like it was something out of a fantasy.
yeah, exactly. He took the Omen seriously. He treated it as a psychological thriller rather than a supernatural horror thriller. It was,
Absolutely.
I mean, it was. I'm guessing when you wrote it, you structured it, the screenplay like that.
Yeah,
So
sure. Sure. I decided the devil had to be real in that his child resembled a human child. And the devil said it would be fair of face, like the Christ. And we chose a cute little boy,
Harvey Stevens.
Harvey, yeah.
Yeah,
And I gave him no dialogue because I did not want him I wanted him to be more of an object than a character, which he was. Finally, in the end, he said, "No, Daddy, no." And I think that was the most he ever said in it in one line. Other than that, he was just giving looks and doing things. And the dog initially was supposed to be a German Shepherd, and they did not have enough trained German Shepherds. In Germany, they had Rottweilers, so that's how that happened, and I think it was a great choice. And everything just flowed naturally.
and worked. Everything came together. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think
Yeah, everything came together. When Gregory Peck came aboard, I thought, oh my God, that was Atticus Finch. That was the dad everybody always wanted. What on earth? How did he come aboard? I was so
yeah,
excited
the guns of
to,
the Navarone. you know,
exactly.
I mean,
When he came aboard, when the day he came to the set, I'd been on the set, doing what rehearsals we could without Peck. And I was so excited that when his limousine rolled up to the studio, I ran out with a script under my arm. I had been reading from, working with the script, and he thought I was there for his autograph. He said, "Oh, all right, what's your name?" And he took his pen out to sign the script. And I said, "I'm that guy." He said, "You wrote this script?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Oh dear." I said, "Why?" He said, "I thought you'd be some grizzled old man with a gray beard who, for having known all this archival biblical stuff." And I said, "Well, are you disappointed?" And he said, "Yes, but we'll carry on." So we, of course, became friends. And
and he added a whole different class to the film.
oh my God,
You know,
yes,
I mean,
without that cutaway to his straight face.
because
I mean,
I've been to
it,
Elstree, where I mean, his name is on the streets of London. He's got the same name plate on in Elstree. So yeah, so he just added a different class.
well, it was the gravity he gave to it. It's kind of a preposterous story. If you had cut away to somebody other than Gregory Peck listening to this, you might have laughed, but you respected Peck's intelligence. And when he was taking this seriously, so did the audience. And I think that that's what was really quite unique about it. And I really haven't seen any of the sequels in the franchise. I saw 20 minutes of the first one. It was okay. I didn't want to do any more because sequels weren't really done in that day. And I thought, as a creative person, what do I have to learn by doing something that definitely won't be as good as what I just did?
Rehashing and
Yeah,
rehashing as well.
and of
Yeah.
course it diminishes. I think it needs new blood, new creative voices, new creative forces. And I mean, if I had it to do today, knowing the kind of money that a franchise can earn, of course I would have. So I took my 7,500 and said thanks.
And also the memorable scenes, like the deaths in the Omen, the hanging, the decapitation, the
Wasn't
impalement,
it
you know,
amazing?
how
Wasn't it amazing?
iconic.
Yeah,
Uh,
I the nun hanging herself, Holly Palance is still a friend of mine, and she still looks the same. And when she walks down the street, she hears people say behind her, "It's all for you, Damien." And the impaling was done for about $1.50. No special effects. That little piece of a cross that came down flying through the air was actually a little hollow piece of balsa wood on a fishing line that came and fell behind him. And he went like that. And it looked like he had been impaled. I mean, it
it's
was
funny because my mum used to work near that church.
oh, no
Well,
kidding. No,
so it's I mean, yeah, it was, it was just done in cuts,
yeah.
wah, straight through him, and I remember as well that the David Warner, the decapitation, um, it wasn't written like that. But Richard had come up with that, and then you wrote the book in a couple of weeks before the film had. come out, it made you want to, because you couldn't believe what you were seeing. This was just
That's
unbelievable.
true. That's true. It had been a guillotine effect of of a big pane of glass being carried across the sky in a construction site that was dropped. But Dick saw something much more in it. He saw if it was put on a horizontal plane, that head just might spin, and so it did. And I was there that day, and I saw the dailies the next day because it had been shot at slow motion speed, which means super fast so that it plays back very slowly. And I thought, I think this movie's gonna work. And the only novelization I had ever heard of was Love Story, which was written by Eric Siegel, which sold a ton of copies and came out after the movie. Well, I went home. I said, Dick, I got to go home and write a book. And he said, well, what are you talking about? I said, this, he said, have you ever written a novel? I said, no, but I had to write a first screenplay. Now I'll write a first novel. And I got it done within 2 months, and it beat the movie onto the stands before the movie was in the theaters. And it was a huge, ridiculously huge success. It had sold 2.5 million copies by the time the movie opened. And wow, life was easier then, Danny.
I mean, I know as well. I remember watching a lot of documentaries that obviously you were interviewed, and you were saying how, if you'd done the sequel, you would have had him in the White House the next day, the devil,
Absolutely, absolutely.
and that would have been probably quite fascinating,
I think
actually.
so. I don't know why they didn't take that path.
Yeah.
It was certainly set up for him to exert some control over world events at that point in time. But at any rate, they did what they did, and
And I know that when you first saw the film, the first screening, you weren't too happy, and Richard Dick rang you and said, you've lost your mind. Are you crazy? He said you've got to go to a psychiatrist. This is a great film. And then you saw audiences' reactions. Because I think when you saw it first, it wasn't really put together. The music and it was
that's
very rough.
correct. I had never seen a first cut. It didn't have any music. It wasn't color corrected. I was so disappointed in the graveyard scene because it was broad daylight. That they shot it day for night. And I didn't understand that. And I left the theater early, and Dick called me, said, people said you weren't happy. And I said, I'm actually not. And he said, okay, I have a guest house. Pack a bag. You're going to come stay in my guest house and be visited by a psychiatrist every day because you are effing crazy. Mm.
And of
And
course, I mean, the film then went on to win an Oscar for the score, which is as iconic as well. Jerry Goldsmith was, just an
yeah,
amazing
yeah, yeah. Goldsmith's,
composer, and
yeah.
I mean, of course, the atmosphere it just adds another layer with obviously with Peck and David Warner as well. I remember David Warner had said when the head was decapitated, he said, "Oh, I lost it in the divorce."
In the divorce, someone asked you, what did you do with the head? He said, I lost it in the divorce.
And he passed away recently as well. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and the legacy of it's a classic. So it's and I mean my both my parents think it's better than The Exorcist. So
Well, it's a
that's
different animal altogether. The Exorcist was just really wonderful in its time. And people, I think, you know, audiences are split between which is better. I personally think the Fuller story is better. They had the tricks, they had the levitating, and they had the green vomit and all that. And Dick and I were determined to do none of that.
but yours is
Um,
it's the story is fascinating. Which is much more interesting. The story is grounded. I'm not saying that that's obviously. I'm saying it's a different something way different. So that's why
yeah.
it holds up on its own. And
Well, as a writer, I had to make it interesting enough for me to want to see those characters evolve, interact, complete their arcs.
And of course, you return to the genre again. With Prophecy, which was I mean, what was behind the script? What sparked your interest in writing this kind of environmental
Well,
horror film? Were you influenced by real world ecological concerns or events?
absolutely. There was a methyl mercury spill in Minamata, Japan in the 50s that corrupted um, the genetic substance of all of what was whatever was whatever was nourished by the water in Lake Minamata was there were frogs coming out with 5, 6 legs. There were, lily pads that were in the shape, gigantic shapes. And so I began to realize because I worked for Jacques Cousteau for many years, and he was the world's first environmentalist, I think, really, who saw, because of what was happening to the oceans, what was going to happen to the planet if it continually was corrupted with poison. Um, and I was interested in doing things that might possibly get the attention of people to start thinking about it. The movie went in a different direction. It was directed by John.
Frankenheimer.
Who
Frankenheimer.
was
Yeah.
who yeah, who really did an awful job. I think it's no secret that he was a heavy drinker, and the monster itself was such a disappointment. When I saw what somebody had made in clay, it's just a big bear, basically, with a freaky face. The thing about the creatures of Minamata, there's this thing about how a human embryo develops or an animal embryo, and it's got a lot of syllables. It's philology replicates ontogeny, and that is as the animal evolves, it comes up from, the amoeba shape to the lizard form, to the this form, to the that form. So what I had created was an animal that had pieces of 5 or 6 different life forms going in it. It had one big eye. It had, it was the stuff of nightmares. It was a great monster.
Like The Thing, like
Yeah,
John
the
Carpenter.
thing.
Yeah.
Right, right, right. But I think if that had not been so mishandled, this movie could have really worked because
I
it
mean,
had good.
it had things in it. I mean, I think Tarantino actually he actually praised it. He actually wrote about it recently, and he actually praised the film for the performances. You had Talia Shire and Amanda Sante. So you had
It's
you
very
know
interesting. I have yet to meet Tarantino, but he talks about me, and I'm a subject that all he has to do is pick up the phone. I'm a curiosity to him because he says Seltzer wrote this brilliant horror movie, and then he tossed the genre to the curb. I couldn't be bothered with it. Had to go. Well, that's it. I'm not a horror writer. I have other interests, and I did. He also did a book on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood really saying, look, Seltzer did it with this, I'm going to do it with that. But he was slightly critical of the book. And he said, it was very original at first, but then it just went to the movie, same scenes. All right, whatever. And so I'm glad he keeps my name out there in the atmosphere.
of course, and then like you're saying, you then moved on to Bird on a Wire, which was an action comedy with Goldie Hawn and Mel Gibson, and that was a big departure, from what you'd written earlier. So, I mean, what was it like coming board, on board on that
Well,
project?
Dick actually introduced me to Mel because Mel was doing the first of the, oh, damn.
What Lethal Weapon
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
franchise?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
And he was just the sweetest kid in the world. Dick said he's a great kid. He said this, and that. So at any rate, the Bird on a Wire, they had a script, and I'm stuck for the name of the guy. Really nice guy, good writer who wrote
Another
it.
writer with you. He did the screenplay.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, they needed it needed a total rewrite, which I did. But the potential was there with the lead character to play so many characters from the lives, the counterfeit lives that he's led while he's on the run. But it was eventful for me because John Badham's assistant has been my wife of 30 years, my companion of many, and now my wife. And we met on that set. So I was very happy to be on the set. And there was lots of fun.
Goldie.
John, oh, Goldie was terrific. Boy, how could you not have a crush on Goldie? She was just so warm and so wonderful, and she and Mel got along so well. So that there was some magic in that. I don't think the picture did very well. I'm not positive. I don't
No, no,
follow it.
I think it commercially did well, but I think critically it was kind of mixed. It was a
Yeah,
commercial success, but it just kind of went under it just kind of
yeah,
went away. And I think
yeah, yeah.
I mean you had David Carradine, I think Bill Duke as well. So you had quite a cast. I mean, what was your reaction when you saw the film? And did you feel, oh no, it could have I could
I thought there were a lot of missed opportunities. Um,
Funny, Mel said the same thing years later. He said that he tried to do comedy, and he just felt he felt some of it was kind of you know
I think
you know
John was such a brilliant director. I mean, he did Saturday Night Fever. He did some really wonderful films. Here's the thing. It's very easy for critics to be cruel about a movie that doesn't work, and it's painful to read because movies are not easy to make. And in failure that everyone tried their best to make a wonderful movie. And sometimes just there's not a clarity of vision. Maybe the script wasn't all that good. Maybe it was not interpreted correctly. But at any rate, I think I read a couple of cruel reviews about it, and I think that's so not necessary, to treat everybody like they're idiots when a movie doesn't quite work. Anyway,
but yeah,
that's
no, that's no, I mean, you probably look back now, probably, if you rewatched it again, I'm sure you probably I mean, it's obviously an interesting I mean,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah.
you
No, no,
know
no, absolutely well.
and you had quite a cast, and you say the director and the filmmaker. Oh, when you come together to make a film, your intention is the best, not for everyone, but usually, in the case, obviously you want the best intentions, yeah, I mean, but you've had quite a career, and obviously, you know, and I mean, because I mean, did you ever want to return? Or I mean, you wouldn't, I suppose, now, but I know you're going to auction your script, your original Omen script's going into auction, the actual draft. So
Yeah.
but it's been a pleasure to talk. By the way, I mean, fascinating to listen to. And I know you're a documentarian, and and you know, obviously you worked in a different time in the film industry. It's different now. I mean,
Oh, it's
it's
very different.
you know
I worked in an industry where everybody who worked in it, from the studio head to the boom operator, was trying to make and hoping to be a part of making a movie unlike any movie that had ever been made before. It was like if you work for General Motors, every car a prototype. The idea was not to copy anybody's success. That was not it. It was to copy. Now, of course, every subject has now been covered, so everything is going to resemble everything else. But the endless retreads of these
the first
brands.
Omen. No, they've done another Omen
Well, that
recently, which
was
I you know
no, I was very unhappy with that because they tried to make it seem by calling it the first Omen as though what I wrote was derived from it, and I thought that was really cheesy of them to do. Also, they never, even though I offered over a course of 8 years to consult, they never called me. And it's not like, honestly, I didn't need my name on it. I just thought I could give them some direction because they were obviously floundering in development for 8 years. But they finally were forced into, giving me a screening and flattering me, and
Kissing
I
your
would.
ass.
That's it. Kissing my ass. Exactly. Uh,
But
Um,
yeah, I mean, obviously, because when they filmed the Omen, they filmed it here in the UK. I mean, what I mean, did you have a good time?
oh,
Obviously,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, I still have things that I stole from the Savoy Hotel hanging on my kitchen walls. No, I really loved London. It was wonderful, and a real opportunity for, you know, me to travel, which
and
is part of the benefit of, being in this business. Before we run out of time and we forget, were you going to talk about the other side of the mountain?
yeah, I mean, go ahead if you want to
No, 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 no. I
know
thought
about
that,
it.
I'm only bringing it up because I'm seeing that the time
It's
is
short, yeah, yeah. No, I could. I mean, yeah. I mean, that was obviously quite successful, and that went on to for Academy Awards as well. And you had Bay Bridges, and yeah. I mean, that was actually a different genre as well. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
yeah.
I only bring it up because our initial, introduction to doing this was the 45th anniversary of the other side of the mountain.
Go ahead.
And
Yeah.
well, at any rate, what I want to say about that is that was all about having a relationship with Jill Kinmont, who was a remarkable woman. Um, when I met her, I had no idea she was once an Olympic hopeful as a skier. She had been on the cover of Sports Illustrated in 1955 when she was 17. I met her as a remedial reading teacher in Beverly Hills when I went with a friend of mine who was a single dad, recently divorced, uh, and one of his kids was in trouble at school. And I was his wingman because he was really beside himself. And I met Jill, and she was in a wheelchair, and she had just so much dignity and authority and confidence, sweetness. I had no idea that I had adopted a child in Vietnam who was in a wheelchair, likely would never walk. And I thought she would be such a great role model for my daughter Fung. And so I made it a point to meet her, and she told me she was once a skier, and in fact, there had been a book written about her 6 years ago called I forget what it was called. It was not called The Other Side of the Mountain. It was called Hang On to the Mountain or something like that. Anyway,
Something similar. Yeah. Something similar.
something
Yeah.
similar. And I went to Bishop and I met her family. She subsequently did meet my daughter and was, in fact, a role model. And I met her family and realized that they could really use the proceeds of what a successful film might bring them, and broached the subject with her and began to talk to her, and realized that she was never going to show any emotion about this. She was called the Iron Lady. People said she never cried. Courage was the most important thing in her life. She's paralyzed from the neck down. And had made this of her life. And she said, if you're trying to make me cry, David, you're not going to. I will not feel sorry for myself. And I said, you don't get it, Jill. I can't make up what you're feeling inside. I can't invent a character unless you open up and give me truly what it must have felt like for your life's dreams to have ended at that point in time. And she said, you're not, we're, I can't go there. So I said, think about it. And weeks later, got something from her that she had dictated to her mother. She took what I said very seriously. And the first line of it was, I awaken every morning having forgotten I can't move. As a writer, I knew we were home. And so she was very, very open and cooperative. I had this legal pad, every page of it was filled to give me everything I needed about what she was feeling. And her family felt that this was something that was opened her up as a person in a way that she couldn't have before. Because when she saw the film, was the first time she ever cried for herself, seeing it as something that happened to someone else, as though she said, it's such a sad story. And shortly after, she had never had a real date because this happened when she was 17, and her family thought she never would. but there was a truck driver who saw this film, and Bishop, California was on his route, and he looked her up. That was John Booth, and she became, you know,
That's
Mrs.
lovely.
Booth.
That's lovely.
Yeah,
I mean,
Jill Kim,
that's lovely. That's a
Jill
lovely
Kim.
story.
And there had been a line in the movie when the real Jill Kinmont was dating Dick Buick, and he wanted to marry her. And she said, "I won't be able to make love." And he said, "It's not all it's cracked up to be." And he married her. And John Booth, who married her, had seen that movie. Said, don't bother me with "You Can't Make Love" because it's not all it's cracked up to be. So I love Jill, and I love that movie a lot.
Oh, that's great. And it's it's kind of down to earth type film. It's different from your other films. But no, no, that's wonderful. That's I thank you for your time, and and I always enjoy chatting because we've spoken obviously just on Messenger, but not properly,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
finally,
Well,
it's been a while. I've really wanted to for so long, and um, and I really appreciate that you and your time. And I'll get my niece to watch Charlie and the Chocolate Factory
yes, yes, yes. Please do.
because obviously you wrote that, so that's obviously you know and they did that. They re did that recently as well. So which
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love the original. So
Yeah, you
but
can't compete with Gene Wilder.
no, exactly. But yeah, no.
Well,
Have,
I want your audience to know that I'm a great admirer of yours as well. I don't think there's anybody who's more insightful and educated to what movies are and what they can be than you are.
oh, thank you. I mean, that's inspiring. I can't, I can't thank you enough. And obviously, I'm a great fan of your work and your legacy. And uh, you know, I have no more to say. I can't. I, I
Okay.
that's lovely. And
Just
thank you.
accept the compliment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Have a lovely weekend and God bless. And we'll stay in touch.
I
And
got you.
I'll share this, with you as well. Thank you,
Terrific.
David. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.